Fuck sake. Unbelievable. It's all unbelievable. Look at how choppy my shit is. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, there we go. Now it's better. I don't know how to fucking do this at all. I'm lucky I got this far. So, we fucking lost everybody. So, like 2 hours of fucking build up. Not that I give a fuck. It's just, Jesus Christ, Dr. Business, get your shit together. I'm incredibly nervous. So, let's just wait for a minute. Did I mention I'm incredibly nervous? We're all the way up to chapter 9. Everything looks different. There we go. No. Holy fuck. There. Everything looks much different on my live stream shit. Like when I record, the lights are different. Okay. How about we start this the right way? Good evening, and welcome to Doctorpiece Theater. My name is Dr. Dennis Business, and tonight we're going to continue our dive into This Is Why I Hate You. But we're going to do it live. When we last left our hero, and I'm not too quiet, I'm not too loud or anything. Deep breaths, no shit. Anywho, when we last left our hero, he is aspiring to make the military thing happen. He believes that that is the only place that he has to be free from his father. And I believe it was the fat, disgusting moose of a girlfriend or stepmom. So he wants to hit the military. All of 17 years old. Chapter 9. Faith in humanity is just another religion. So I read over this journal a bit, and it's pretty clear I've been a depressed pain in the ass. If you're reading this, you're probably confused as to why the sudden change. Well, the situation has changed. A lot has happened since I wrote the last entry, so I'll help you catch up. Despite Ashley's feelings, I only had one decision to make. I had to choose between being around a crazy father 40% of my day and only seeing my girlfriend maybe 10%, or I could choose to have a job and likely never see either of them again. I chose to walk, and since I made that decision, I've completely lost touch with Ashley. You would expect me to be more broken up than I am, but she went cold on me the moment I confirmed I was leaving. It was like the second the words left my lips, she erased everything about me in her mind, and suddenly I was no one. It was mental. Regardless, I already went through military entrance processing station, and I'm pretty glad that's over, considering that was one of the most significant aspects of me processing into the military. When I was in the processing station, I witnessed a lot of human failure. It was an interesting experience seeing grown men cry because they didn't have the depth perception to be pilots. Some of the men weren't physically strong enough to even be considered for any job at all. They even denied people for having a blood pressure level they didn't like. I understand being upset about being rejected entirely, but some guys were sobbing over the fact that they couldn't get the specific job title they wanted. Life, for a lot of people, seems to be about not appreciating what you have and always wanting more. If the same guy who failed the vision test and cried actually passed it, he would have no doubt have another episode down the line. Maybe it would be some other test he'd fail, or some administrative decision that denied his wishes to fly the specific type of plane he wanted. Self-assigned victims will always be victims. I don't want to call him pathetic because I'm trying to be more positive. But my hate runs deep, and I can't feel sorry for people who go out of their way to feel sorry for themselves. Once I was through MEPS, it wasn't long before they had me sitting at the airport waiting to fly south. All the new recruits gathered at the entrance of our plane. We easily identified each other somehow. Maybe it was the look of dread we carried, knowing the next couple of months of our lives were going to wreck us. We were all probably running from something. The strong desire for flight is so consuming. No matter what our reasons for being there actually were, I'm pretty sure my family dysfunction had them all beat. When our plane landed in Texas, no one was there to greet us. We had to follow signs in the airport just to get to the waiting area designed specifically for military members. The room was insanely crowded already. Their schedule was specifically targeted at us at arriving in the middle of the night, in part so that meeting the training instructors for the first time would be twice as terrifying. Something about hearing screams of pure rage at 1 a.m. cuts deeper through your skin than screams accompanied by sunshine. It's just mental terrorism 101. Thanks for that, military psychologists. After we were guided like mindless cattle onto the buses arriving in a seemingly endless line just outside the airport, we were driven directly to our training facility at the local base. Each bus was welcomed by the screams of sociopaths and people who were no doubt never hugged as children. After waiting for about 30 minutes outside, they decided the group of 40 or so trainees with me into a small classroom. Once we were inside, they verified our individual identities and assigned us flight numbers. After this process was complete, we were called out by the flight number we were given, and from that point, we were directed to our new homes. These facilities were essentially composed of one massive room shared with 60 other trainees. I could complain but it was exactly what I had expected. Boring. As training progressed, I quickly realized that I had abusive training instructors. I know this because shortly after I graduated BNT, one of those TIs who led our fight, Sergeant Johnson, was demoted for punching a trainee in the neck. She regularly took things too far. It didn't help that she knew how to abuse us mentally, physically, and emotionally. Most training instructors would leave the heart alone, but for Sergeant Johnson, emotional abuse was her primary function. When I first saw Sergeant Johnson, I thought she was a gorgeous little firecracker of a woman. She was about 5 feet tall, had an enormous amount of freckles, and red hair. If we had the energy or privacy to gratify ourselves at night while in training, we would no doubt all be doing it to her. But the fantasy with my training instructor only went as far as my ignorance of her true nature. The woman turned into a monster, and not the kind you'd expect from a drill sergeant. Let's dive into an exact scenario. We are a couple weeks into training, and I was almost entirely alone in the sleeping area. Most all the other trainees elected to attend church that fit their religious beliefs that day. I had no beliefs and refused to go into any church. Sergeant Johnson had to stay behind with us and basically babysit us due to us not being willing to go and pretend to love any god. As I was cleaning my locker by my bunk, Sergeant Johnson screamed, "Trainee Linfeld!" I screamed back, "Trainee Linfeld reports, Sergeant." Sergeant Johnson stood at the entrance with another military member and angrily stared in my direction. "Get over here and lay on your back immediately!" she screamed at me. In basic, you're taught not to think for yourself. You're taught to do exactly as they instruct, otherwise you're punished through paperwork or forced exercise. I moved to the ground in front of the two women as they commanded. Sergeant Johnson then called over the other trainees and instructed them to do the same. Despite us only being feet away from her, she screamed as if we were across the room, "Put your feet and hands straight up in the air, trainees!" We all proceeded to put our feet and hands into the air. It was at that point she started chuckling to the other female drill sergeant. She said, and I quote, "See, that's called a dead cockroach. That's what I was talking about." The sergeant made us hold that position for a good 3 to 5 minutes. If you've never achieved the position I'm referencing, I encourage you to. It's likely the only way you'll understand how painful it can be. It's actually ridiculous how many exercises and positions can quickly become intensely painful if you push slightly further than you're supposed to. However, the dead cockroach wasn't even an exercise. It was humiliation. I don't really care that you called us idiots while we did it. I wasn't worried about being treated as if I was a piece of property. I was used to that by now. My main focus was to not upset the training instructors more than they already were. I could never allow myself to be the weakest link, as the moment I fell out of line, I could be washed back and possibly have to repeat an entire week of basic. At one point in basic, due to my failure to maintain my composure, I was forced to point and laugh at the other trainees as they did push-ups. "I am sick and tired of you morons screwing up day after day," the male technical sergeant in charge of our entire flight screamed, "You're embarrassing the Air Force! You are embarrassing me, and you're no doubt humiliating the very vaginas you were born from." Hearing him say that caused me to let out a slight but noticeable burst of laughter under my breath. It was one of the stupidest things I had ever heard a person say. Unfortunately for me, the tech sergeant heard my slip up and marched towards me so he could scream in my face, "All right, trainee Linfelt, how about you stand over there?" He pointed just to the right, where the entire flight was standing in formation. As I marched over to the spot he pointed at, he commanded my fellow trainees to face right. The sergeant then commanded them to get into push-up position and immediately instructed me to point at all of them on the ground. The tech sergeant said silently, "Trainee Linfelt, you will laugh at them and remind them they are pushing up because of you." I was trying so hard not to lose it again on the tech sergeant with laughter. He could see I was amused, so he marched over and got in my face once more. "Do you want to be washed back? Do you want to repeat the last week with another flight?" he asked in a low, angry tone. In that moment, I instantly lost all amusement from the situation. I absolutely despise wasting hard work. So if I continued my attitude, I would be screwing myself. So I proceeded to saying aloud in a monotone voice, "Ha, ha, ha. You're all pushing because of me." The drill sergeant was pleased. "Good! Continue!" he screamed in a voice that would make the average person think he was losing his mind. "Ha ha ha! You're all pushing because of me," I said again. "Good! Scream it, trainee Linfelt!" the training instructor said with an increasingly large grin on his face. "Ha ha ha! You're all pushing because of me," I screamed as I stared at all the trainees doing push-ups. They were clearly getting more and more angry with me as the pain in their arms intensified. It was in that moment the reality of my situation sank in. I personally liked doing push-ups. The more I did, the more I could do. It was incredible to watch my arms essentially level up. These trainees obviously did not feel the same as I did. I had seen people in movies that were killed by their fellow man for less than what I was actively doing to my peers. Just looking at their faces shaking, turning red, their eyes locked on me as they pushed. It was one of the few moments in my life that changed me. I am living amongst animals that know their emotions more than basic reasoning. These were animals that could only see what was in front of them, and in their haze of anger, they didn't even have a slight idea of what was over the horizon. It was the instinct-driven, intellectually bankrupt animal mentality so many ways of my peers embraced. And for that, I learned to always fear them. How could I possibly trust these raging idiots? I'm a person who plans before he acts. If I want something done, I rarely do it in the moment. I lay it all out and proceed when I am certain of success. It's only when I'm faced with extremes that I am forced to react without forethought. These children in the bodies of men, laying on their aching chests at my feet. They were performing such a simple exercise, and it caused them to look as murderous as I had ever seen anyone be. I was nothing like them. "Scream it, trainee Linfeld!" the commander. "Ha ha ha, you're all pushing because of me." My yell was no longer monotone. The confident scream I had before was replaced by something weak and distorted. The instructor could see I was disturbed by what was happening. It was only then he commanded everyone stand and reassume their formation at the position of attention. With my experiences, while my experiences in basic were not that significant, those select moments stood out to me. Those moments made me learn a lot about how easy it is to manipulate and control people. Sergeant Johnson alone could write a book on emotional warfare. Every other weekend, she was threatening to withhold letters from home. She would tell us one day we were amazing and the next day we were scum. These animals posing as airmen in training would take it out on each other, not seeing she was fabricating problems out of nothing just to make us squirm for her sadistic pleasure. The enjoyment Sergeant Johnson took of putting us in the position of dead insects, torturing us by using gravity itself against us. The way my fellow trainees fell for every trick and trap along the way, some even breaking down, literally crying for their mommy. The only respect I had left for anyone in that entire building was the tech sergeant. He showed me in a matter of minutes how quickly he could turn a group of men against me. It was something most people never learn. Men are weak, often able to be controlled by even mild influences. Most men I've known should not be trusted. I joined the military to escape the enemy in my home. But here, I found the world is full of people who are ready and willing to write you off for nothing. Maybe the hatred I expressed earlier in this journal wasn't so far off. Maybe I'm not becoming more mature, but simply losing my grip on reality. Escaping my father gave me hope, and like a new goldfish given to a child, my hope is rapidly expiring. People say teenagers are stupid and out of touch with reality. But if our bodies die the more we age, what's to say we, as people, don't also die emotionally too? Are we really growing up? Or is that just a nice way of saying we're dying both on the inside and out? That was chapter 9 of This Is Why I Hate You. And you want to know something funny? For a while, I forgot I wasn't by myself. Everybody could hear that okay? All right. How about we just take a 5-minute break? And because we're all stuck inside, how would I just go ahead and read chapter 10 as well? All right. There was a lot of talk in chapter 9 about where certain things were learned. I don't understand. You know why I don't understand? Because that fucking chapter was boring as shit. It was all about the military. Great. You're in the fucking military. We get it. You went to airman school. That's fucking boring. I feel like I'm disappointing because I don't have anything to say. I don't know what to say about this book. Honestly, I'm just reading the fucking thing and I don't know if this makes sense, but I can't read and process at the same time. You know? Yeah. I think we're ready for chapter 10. Well, that's what I thought. I've been thinking about live stream stuff for a while, and I know I did the bathtub one, which for some reason I made that thing work, but I can make it work in a bathtub, but I can't, like, not at my house, but I can't make it work at my house. I don't know why. But I figured I should practice what I preach. That's what I figured. Is everybody ready? Well, we're going to do it anyway. Chapter 10. Failure to perform. It's been a month now since I went through basic. The last entry was made during the first week of security forces training. I feel like a train bound to metal tracks with only one destination, becoming a cop for the Air Force. My roommate, Airman Taylor, is obsessed with country music being from Minnesota. He's a scrawny-looking brunette guy with brown eyes and pimples on his face. To save you from looking at a map, Minnesota is right by North Dakota and shares a border with Canada. I just assumed most people who were into country music came from the South, considering the desert cowboy cliche. I think it's pretty hard to be a cowboy and build a snowman at the same time. Regardless of the fact he blasts his inbred music on a regular basis, he seems like a pretty decent guy. Or that's my impression of him. As I had learned before, most everyone is socially palatable until they have a significant reason to be otherwise. I bet if you offered my roommate $100 million to smother me in my sleep, he'd have it done the first chance he got. Humans seem sane because appearing to be that way serves us better than the alternative. We isolate, segregate, and demonize people whose behaviors conflict with other members of society and then act surprised when someone snaps. We find out someone randomly loses it and has in fact been crazy the whole time. But of course, it came out of nowhere. When you create a closet and tell people if they hide their darker traits in it, everyone will accept them. You're going to have a full closet. However, the reality of the closet is that you can only hold so much. One day, it may burst. I'm just saying, stop acting shocked when you find out someone you knew wound up being a nut job. You didn't try to connect with them and find out who they really were. All you did was give them an incentive to pretend to be like you. You built the ship, now sink with it. Regardless, I was able to call Ashley. Our conversation kind of went like this. Hey, Ashley, it's me, Arthur, I said in a hopeful voice. Ashley replied, Who? Me being horrified by this response, I tried to remain calm and said again, It's Arthur. I haven't been gone that long, have I? Ashley paused and then said, Oh, hi. I wouldn't forget the guy who took my virginity, Arthur. I just didn't expect you to call me. I replied, Yeah, well, I thought I should. She then said, Oh, okay, in a tone that seemed completely disinterested. My emotions were telling me the full story. She already had moved on and had no desire to have any kind of future with me. It's probably my fault, considering the fact I made it clear I would never see my father again. I guess she just assumed I wrote the whole town off as well. I really thought the way she acted when I left was a phase, and that she would miss me down the line. Seems I'm still unwanted. I followed up with, So, how's school? She replied, It's fine. I kind of wish I got a GAD early like you did, Arthur, so I could get out of here sooner. We sat in awkward silence on the phone for about a minute. I felt like I was sitting next to a dead house pet, expecting it to come back to life. I didn't want to accept that something I cared about wasn't coming back. I told Ashley she could email me if she ever wanted to talk, as I didn't have a consistent phone number yet. She said okay, then goodbye. Sadly enough, I think my father would have been happier to hear from me than her. It seemed like such a long time since I last saw her, but I probably would have had a new girlfriend in that time if she were the one who left me behind. I don't blame her. In other news, I recently found out In other news, I recently found out that I am a coward. One of the security force instructors staged a hostage situation right in front of class. We were sitting in a pretty standard, far more modern classroom in the middle of a security forces training building when a gunman burst through the door of our class, pointing a gun at our instructor while repeatedly screaming, Sergeant Mason! Sergeant Mason! Quickly, after the man stormed in, he barked out a dialogue about military conspiracies. Why don't you tell them the truth about what's really going on in the government? Why don't you tell them the truth about what you people really are? No surprise, the room full of security force trainees did nothing. The sad part is, I was sitting only about 12 feet from the man holding the gun, And the only thing I did was zone out on the papers on my desk. I didn't try to fight him. I didn't try to alert anyone outside. I just sat there like a pathetic child wanting his mommy to come and save the day. He had a gun. I didn't. Even if I felt like being a hero in a place of borderline soiling my underwear, I didn't see a chance for disarming the man. After what seemed like 5 minutes, the gunman lowered his gun and started chuckling. Our instructor giggled to herself as well. We were obviously all confused, but our instructor quickly cleared things up. Well, that's unfortunate. I was hoping someone would have tried to stop him from blowing my brains all over the wall, Sergeant Mason said. The sergeant then thanked the makeshift actor for playing his part and revealed to us that the gun the actor was holding was a dummy. The barrel of his shiny silver weapon was welded shut, preventing anything going in or out. The only way we could have seen this, however, was by looking down the chamber itself. The most humiliating moment was when Sergeant Mason turned to me and asked, Airman Linfeld, you were right there. What were you doing? I responded, I was trying not to escalate the situation any further. He was far enough away from me to get a shot off before I could tackle him. I didn't want to make things worse. I said it with such confidence, but inside I felt like a complete failure. What I said was both the truth and a lie. Since I was probably right about the possibility of successfully wrestling away a gun without getting shot, but I'd take being in the wrong and brave over a coward and right. It's the principle of the matter. This world is full of people who are too afraid to face corruption and death head on. The same people would watch a father violate his own children and do nothing for years and years. If everyone stood up and fought in situations like these, would they still arise? If you knew 20 people would tackle you at the moment you pulled out a gun, be honest, what are the chances you would ever do it? My life is meaningless, but my existence can have more significance than the cowardly state I let it in. Cowardly state if I let it in. What I just went through proves how basic and irrelevant I am to this day. I will never stand by and watch someone become a victim again. Holy fuck, man. Oh my God. It's like poison. I don't even know what to say about that one. These two chapters have been terrible. They've just been terrible. They're not even about anything. It's like the title of the book should be like, Shit I Say Waiting for the Bus. Makes no fucking sense. I would rather be wrong and brave. That house is on fire. I'm getting the fuck out of here. Like, that was a terrible car accident. Let's go. Unbelievable. since we are all stuck inside, I think I would be doing my duty if I just went ahead and read chapter 11 as well. It's not that long. Everybody ready? Chapter 11, In Hell with an Angel. While the dorms are a miserable place, I've met a pretty amazing girl named Corey Jeffries, or Airman Jeffries, as I'm supposed to call her. I went through a suicide/homicide prevention course recently, and was one of the only people to pass it. Apparently, I'm one of the few people in the military who has the ability to show compassion for people about to kill themselves. A surprise, right? Most of us are just mindless morons who practically wreck our pants at the idea of having the opportunity to shoot someone. Now ask these people about the human side of war. Perhaps to see countless military members go brain dead before your eyes. Corey was a cute short girl with brown eyes and dyed blonde hair. She was discouraged by the military dress code by having dyed hair, but she clearly didn't care. She was assigned as my partner in digitally raiding those homes with pre-recorded scenarios. I guess it was after our experience that she decided she wanted to be my friend. We were basically two human beings surrounded by mindless drones. How could we not gravitate towards one another? Where the fuck are we? This makes no sense. In the training event, each airman was called up to stand next to a projector with their dummy guns and observe the screen. This felt a lot like playing a video game like Time Crisis in the arcade. I watched student after student fail to get the suicidal digital characters they faced to drop their weapons. That's what happens when you treat people on the verge like they're rabies-infested dogs. The computer-controlled video would take the trainees through a house, straight into a room, and the same guy would be on his bed with a gun to his head. As soon as the airman saw him holding a gun, regardless of his obvious suicidal condition, they in response would just scream over and over, "Drop the gun! Drop the gun now!" Someone was even stupid enough to say, "Drop the gun, or I'll shoot!" And everyone in the room reacted with either laughter or angry scoffs. It was clear the student threatening someone with a gun to his head offended our trainer. Sergeant Mason asked in an angry tone, "You would rather shoot someone pointing a gun to themselves?" The student replied, "No, I'm sorry, Sergeant." Their words fell on deaf ears. We were still incredibly disgusted with the stupidity it took to even consider threatening someone already wanting to die. It was my turn to go up. Corey stood next to me and aimed her weapon at the screen. The projector took us pretty much through the same scenario. The same man had a gun at his side. I was glad to see the gun wasn't at his head yet. I began to talk to him, as if he was really in front of me. "Sir, we're here to make things right. How can we resolve this?" I asked. I could hear Sergeant Mason clicking away at his computer mouse, no doubt selecting the next path for the scenario to take. My wife left me, and I want to die. The man on the projector screamed. He lifted the gun to his head. Crap, right? I thought I was doing well, but clearly I needed to adapt. The man before me wore black shorts and a white tank top. He was slightly heavier, middle-aged, and ungroomed. It wasn't my job to remind him how lazy he appeared or what a mess his house was. When someone's about to jump, you don't push them. You do everything you can to pull them back. I quickly said, "Sir, you have so much to live for. Please don't do this. We want to help you." Hearing this, Corey then chimed in, "Please put the gun down and it'll be okay, I promise." I heard Sergeant Mason click away. Yet again the man said, "I have nothing to live for. I'm gonna do it." I felt slightly offended the computer didn't register what I said. But it wasn't state-of-the-art equipment, so what can you do? I refused to let him give up like this. I wasn't willing to accept failure. I responded to the man. "You have so much to live for. This situation is only temporary. You can be happy again. Don't make this mistake." Corey remained silent next to me as we both looked on in awkward silence. The man then said, "Oh, okay, I'm putting down the gun." And with that, we were the first two people out of the 14 or so that went before us to actually save the digital character. The room didn't offer applause. Everyone there simply remained quiet. The only real congratulations we got for being the first to save someone was a smile and a nod from Sergeant Mason. It's in a silly way, but I felt really proud of myself for saving the character. It was like I wasn't just this useless coward I previously concluded myself to be. Looks like I have a little bit of that ridiculous thing people call hope. Regardless, to my pleasant surprise, Corey and I have been pretty inseparable since. I always try to eat at her table in the chow hall, and she often goes out of her way to stand by me in formation. We were sitting in my dorm the other day. "How old are you, Arthur?" Corey asked. "I'm 18, I said. I would have mentioned turning 18 earlier, but birthdays are pretty irrelevant to me, so why should I celebrate being 1 year closer to death? Corey smiled and replied, "Well, I just turned 17. I asked, "Why did you join so early, Corey?" She giggled and replied, "I graduated early and wanted to be a lit major, but couldn't afford college. You?" I felt incredibly awkward. I really didn't want to answer this question. Having a GED isn't really something to brag about, but I told her anyway. "I got a GED After I got expelled from high school for fights I had been in on and off campus. Corey sat back and said, "Wow, you're an uneducated troublemaker, aren't you?" Fortunately, she said it in a joking tone. Otherwise, I would have died a little inside. I replied, "Yeah, you could say that." She smiled and said, "I'm kidding. There's obviously a lot more to you. How'd your parents handle you joining up?" Great. Another question I didn't want to dive into at all. Just thinking about my father's reaction when I told him I was leaving made me feel sick. I didn't want to talk about my dad's excited look when he realized he didn't have to put up with me anymore. I didn't want to talk about how his girlfriend packed my things as soon as humanly possible and how ready they both were to say goodbye. Yeah, don't mention it at all. The idea they never had to see me again clearly was the best thing that happened to them in some time. Their response was expected, but somehow emotionally crippling. No, Corey had enough information to know the amount of truth that she needed. I just wanted to hang around with Corey and forget about my other life. So I said, "Well, there, whatever. I'm here. That's all I care about." She smiled and replied, "I'm glad you're here, Arthur." I started blushing, only to try and wipe it away. Not a lot of people showed such sincere interest in me. I felt so lucky to be around this girl. Side note, yes, I realize I'm softening up. But for Corey, it's what she deserves. I thought the military would make me even more serious and a domineering person. I was partially wrong. There's just something about most everyone around me being more miserable than I've ever been, mixed with being able to see Corey on a daily basis. This place, so many describe as hell, has become an unexpected paradise for me. I feel like a lit match. When I'm surrounded by light, I'm worthless. In the dark, I thrive. This is where I belong. That was chapter 11 of This Is Why I Hate You. Just a couple of little things. Number one, when you go in the military, you don't go in for life and no one ever sees you again. It's not like, hey, I'm 17, I'm going in the military. See you later, Dad. I'm going to just be in the military on the hidden island that I never come back from. And there was something else. There's something else. And seeing as he's been in the army for 3 full chapters, nothing else. I think it might have been the chapter before, and I think it's the chapter after. But for being in the army for like 6 months, there's not a lot of soldiering going on. It's sort of just hanging out. Did you hear like the dude in front of him had like cutoffs and a bitch beater on running the military course? That's not how the military works. And Corey is walking around the base with dyed blonde hair, and she's doing it because she doesn't give a shit. That's not how the military works. And I'm not even in the military, and I know how it doesn't work that way. Yeah. Black shorts. Huh. Well, that was chapter 11. What did everybody think of that? And no, you can't join the military till you're 18. And I have a feeling that the intake at military isn't just full of a bunch of crying men. I think probably men that work their whole lives being in, cadets and things like that, wanting to be an airman, wanting to be a pilot, striving to be a pilot. And then they go in and find out that their depth perception sucks and they'll never ever fly a plane. That shit would make a grown man cry. Just because you didn't get the job you want is a complete different deal. And we're not even talking about Greg. We're talking about Arthur's decision-making process. And I don't know what a suicide/homicide class is, because those things are two very different things. I don't think you can just be like, you know what I mean? They're not the same. I also don't understand why Arthur was offended that the computer didn't listen. Yeah, between chapter 9 and chapter 10, a whole month went by. Cowboys can make snow like snowmen. That was a big point. Here's another little sentence. I will never stand by and watch someone become a victim again. If everyone stood up and fought in situations like these, would they still arise? If you knew 20 people would tackle you the moment you pulled out a gun, be honest, what are the chances you would ever do it? Our adventures are very interesting. And I want to thank everybody for coming by and listening. And I know we're all locked inside, so we've got lots of reading to do. And we'll pick apart the whole thing and talk about it another time. But this has been Doctorpiece Theater, and my name is Dr. Dennis Business. And as always, my live friends,